Venthyr with the Guardian Druid. And I've got the Legacy of the Sleeper legendary trait going. I'm gonna see how that feels. As we go. A couple of things to note here is that it does reduce the cooldown of your Berserk by actually half a minute, which is really nice. So you've got that on a 2.5 minute cooldown now. And then the other thing it does is it increases your throughput by a substantial amount, 25% increased damage, and then grants you 15% Leech as well. So it's a passive trait that does all of that. And so anytime I use Berserk, we're going to see exactly what that does. So I've got a couple things that I'm tracking. I've got the pull-to-pull damage done. I've got, we're going to hop down here. I've got my spells specifically so that you see, you know, where the damage is coming from. We're going to pop it here. And then I'm going to pop the Covenant ability, which is Ravenous Frenzy, which is relatively straightforward. Again, targeted more towards throughput than anything else. All that extra stuff as I'm trying to kite around. But the changes that we had this week were pretty good for Bear. In the latest beta, we got Iron Fur throughput in terms of mitigation going way up, which is really nice.
We will break you like all the rest.
But other than that, Bear has not seen many changes at all, so if you're currently playing Winning Live, you're not going to notice too many differences, if really any. It's more so the legendary effects and then your Covenant ability. So the Ravenous Frenzy is actually a 3-minute cooldown, but you get 20 seconds of just pure throughput on damage and healing. And it actually penalizes you if you're not active during that time. So you're going to want to make sure that you are casting something pretty much on cooldown no matter what, or it ends up hurting you.
I need to target something first.
Then, of course, the Covenant, just ability in general, not related to class, is Lord of Shadows. Haven't had a lot of reason to use it yet, really, in any dungeon. But I'm sure it's going to have its moments, just like any movement enhancer. So we're off cooldown now on Berserk, so on the next big pull I'm going to go ahead and use it just so we can get some testing done with this legendary. It on this next anima robot thing. One of the things that's different too about these dungeons is that there's a lot more stuff that will fixate, and so kiting even more so than now is a little bit more relevant. Something I have to keep reminding myself. Alright, we're going to go ahead and pull these two, and then we'll use Berserk on the next. Next pull here. Bears still struggle a little bit if you don't get Thrash up right away in terms of holding just at least that initial burst. The threat. Okay, we're going to go ahead and cast Berserk here, and we're going to take a look at what that does from a spell perspective. And overall throughput for both damage as well as healing here. With the Leech. So it still kept me towards the bottom, even with the AoE situation for damage. Nothing more like more of these. Help the healer out a little bit. Really didn't do much just on that pull. Most of my damage comes from Thrash, of course, spamming that. But then you've got Brambles, which is really helping me out. And then from a healing perspective, Frenzied Regen. Nothing, the Leech is pretty insignificant. At least to this point. On a larger pull. Out of there, get back in. Okay. I'm likely going to grab this patrol just because someone is going to step on them while we do boss. When these things shift out, they drop aggro and then they fixate on someone. Just realized that now. I was wondering why they were dropping. I don't think I have res on my bar. Although the entrance is right there. So overall, it's this is a pretty darn long cooldown, 3 minutes for straight throughput. It just adds another global, which is nice to a certain extent. We're gonna go ahead and pop Berserk here, and we're gonna double down with the Covenant ability, Ravenous Frenzy. still doing bottom of the barrel damage, despite the fact that I had both popped. They are both done now. So even with the legendary, the damage increase and throughput that you're getting from Berserk still is not all that great. So it's a little bit different, especially compared to now, in terms of what we're used to as tanks, in terms of your damage throughput. Looks like we got extras. Yeah, so again, it doesn't feel different really from live at all. Still want to make sure you keep Iron for up as much as possible. When we look at just a few of the basic questions that I'm looking to answer is really, how do these Covenant abilities feel? How does the Legendary ability feel? Legendary ability is, so far, to this point, something I don't really notice all that much. The Leech is nice, so it gives you a little extra in terms of your healing, your self-healing, but just a little bit, right? You've got still a 2.5 minute cooldown on it, so it really comes down to how much you think that you're getting out of it. It still may turn out to be one of the better ones, though, for thinking, so we'll have to see. Covenant ability for Guardian feels a little lackluster. Again, it's a very, very long cooldown, and even when I stack that on top of my legendary ability, right, cast Berserk, and the Venthyr ability, Ravenous Frenzy, at the same time, it still is bottom of the barrel in terms of overall throughput and damage output. So I think the greatest thing that you're getting there is an extra self-heal, in case you don't have Frenzied regen available. Pop it here. Pop it both, actually. This is a good time to do it. And get both these gargoyles. So we keep Iron Fur up. That doesn't fall off. Yep, here goes the second one. Survival Instincts. And we'll start kiting a little bit, low on rage. Get a Frenzied off. Frenzied regen, that is. And then we're going to Door Shadows for fun. See, that cast time just kind of ruins it. I know originally they had that so it was an insta-cast. It became a little too OP for classes that already had it, but at the same time, you know, what's the point? Anyway. All comes down to personal preference, but it just doesn't, Door Shadows doesn't feel as good unless you're out of combat, I guess. And even then, why would you do it with a cast timer? So. Alright, we're on to the second boss. This one's pretty fun. It's an ad fight, but what isn't an ad fight these days? Both my Covenant ability and my Legendary ability are on cooldown. And then the only problem that you really have is the target cap that we're running into in Shadowlands. That's going to be a real thing for tanks when it comes to picking up ads. And then the fact that everything either fixates or drops aggro relatively easily is also going to be challenging just to kind of adjust to. So that target cap, if you don't know what I'm talking about, a lot of the AoE abilities for tanks are capped at 5 or 6 targets. And so you're not going to be able to hit everything like you do now. So you'll notice not everything goes green right away. So it takes a few to get the extra aggro in there. So that's just something the healers are going to have to be aware of too, is that everyone's just going to take a little bit more damage while the tank is really either going to have to click on or tab target to get to what they need. So another big pull, so I'm going to Berserk. Dark skins up. Regen. And then I'm going to do more roar. Soaring him real quick. Get out of combat and get myself. There we go. So I am running with the Disc Priest too, so that's one of the other things is when I fall behind, he needs help. Looks like man is good. I'm going to LOS pull. We've got our Covenant ability up, so we're going to pop that. Help us with some Throughput. Again, always be casting. Good rule of thumb in general, but this class ability, Covenant ability, really penalizes you unless you always are clicking something. Roar again. Gives him a second to catch up. Alright, we're golden. Okay, we're on to the next boss. And I'm hoping this group knows what to do. And if you want to read the tooltip for the legendary I'm running, it's in the lower left-hand corner. But for this boss, we need to make sure everyone kites their ad to these little red obelisks here. See, because if you get hit or if you go in melee range of them, they hit you really hard. Bring them over here. I don't think they know what to do. No, they do not. It's okay. We'll just have to let them know. But we also weren't supposed to get that gargoyle ad, so not sure where that came from and why it pulled so late. Let's make sure they know. Go. Alright, so when the boss calls that additional ad, it moves pretty darn slow, but whoever it's fixating on or targeting at that time, all you have to do is move behind one of those little pillars or obelisks or whatever you want to call them, and that will make it go away. It just absorbs it. So okay, looks like we got one of these guys before. Should be able to get through without pulling them. But I'm going to wait to pull boss just in case until everyone gets back. You got 2 distinct spell books too. So you've got all your baseline skills in one. And someone grabbed it. Oh, there we go. Alright. So I let them know what to do in chat. Let's see if they're ready. Oh, and I didn't pull it, but someone did, so we're going. Good news is I got both abilities up, so we're going to go ahead and get Thrash up. The 3 stacks, and then we're just going to lay into it with Mangle. Okay, there's the ad. I'm gonna go ahead and taunt it. And then they get absorbed into that little pillar there. So, hopefully they all saw that. I gotta get interrupts in the boss too. Which we're missing a few of these. Here's this guy. Got it taunted. Come on to the pillar. Don't let it hit you, it's gonna hurt a lot. Do not stand in melee range of those. Just something to remember. And we got another one. And I got my taunt up, so let's get it over here. We had someone leave. I'm guessing it's whoever pulled the boss. Yeah, we got people dying to it. Either way, we're able to pull some decent assumptions about both the legendary ability as well as the Covenant ability. Let me go ahead and Stampeding Roar. We'll get this here just in case there's a chance. But a 3-minute cooldown on the Venthyr Covenant ability is probably a little too much. And see, this is it's almost at soft in range, so we don't have any way to absorb these, so we're gonna die here. And we'll see how quickly we can get someone else so that we can finish this thing. But if not, not a big deal. Overall, on that pull, I was able to get both the Covenant ability up as well as Berserk, so you can kind of see what the throughput looks like, where the source of my damage came from. And okay, we got our 5th, so hopefully we'll be able to finish here. So Brambles is actually doing more now than I feel like it does in live, and then it's got a great little healing component to it as well, with the shield. You couple that together, Ysera's Gift plus Frenzy Regen, and you got pretty good throughput on your self-healing. When you look at my overall throughput and seeing that most of it is really just auto-attack melee, you know, just on that boss pull, that's single target, obviously, for the most part. One of the only ones that really is, because you don't damage the ads, you just put them into the pillars. Druid's just not doing the type of damage that I think a lot of us are used to, at least in live right now. So, something to consider. Oh, jeez. And people that just love ninja pulling. Alright. Okay, we're good. I've got both of my cooldowns up again, so I'm going to pop them both again simultaneously as soon as the boss comes, and then hopefully our new hunter, I believe, joined us, so hopefully they know what to do. But as of right now, I'm not putting a lot of faith in this legendary, at least, you know, if you're running dungeons, and that's your primary thing. It may have a little bit better effect as it starts to scale in raid. Those obviously, you know, you're going to need your oh shit button in raid, and having Berserk gives you that. So let me go ahead and get this guy to this pillar. Gotta get it in. Get it in. There it goes. You gotta go almost behind it, or it's not gonna go in it at all. So, we taunt this guy. Come on in. There we go. And then you just want to be careful. Like I said, if you just stand in melee, you really can't kill it. So it's just a matter of cutting that thing in there. Got another one. Trying to get it taunted. Okay, we're gonna let that one go. That person seems like they know what they're doing. Good. Okay, so if we get another one here, we have to kill it with the one pillar still up. So if we don't kill the boss here, it's gonna be a wipe. Pull this here. It's on me. It should go right in now. Okay, we're good. Now we win. Okay. No bugs, we're good. Alrighty. So we'll go through here. Hopefully that hunter gets a res. Otherwise I'll go back. No, the priest is still there, so I think we're good. So this is a kind of a fun room. But again, overall, you can see where I fell on the meters for single target boss damage. Despite the fact that I've got increased damage throughput from my Ravenous Frenzy and Berserk. Right now it's just, I think it's tuned a little too low for this to be worthwhile to a Guardian Druid. Initial feedback, haven't done any read testing, but that's kind of where my head's at. I'm gonna pop Berserk early here because this can last a while otherwise. The longer he feeds off of these things, the longer you're in this room for. As you can see, he heals the full by siphoning off their life. Knock down these last few, and then we're going to be on to the last boss here. I saved my Covenant ability for the last boss again, just to kind of test throughput, and then we'll get Berserk up likely partway in. Okay, we've got 60 seconds. So we might have it for the tail end, but I'll go ahead and I'll pop Ravenous Frenzy right from the start. I think the synergy between Berserk and Ravenous Frenzy is there. I just don't think that the throughput is quite there yet. Or at least not where I think it's going to end up being. So I think there's certainly some tuning to do for Guardian and Venthyr. So if you're interested at all in, thematically a Vampiric Druid, or Vampiric Bear. Right now, it does not feel nearly as strong as like Night Fate, for example. So we got Berserk here in 10 seconds. We'll go ahead and pop up now. So this is the only boss that I have not stacked the abilities, and instead I've staggered them on this run so far. At least on a boss fight. And if you just kind of compare me to the other cookie cutter level 60s, most of which are likely not running a legendary at this point because it's kind of confusing unless you know exactly how to forge them. The damage is just way down there, and not really where it should be. Here we go. We get a belt, and then hopefully from that we'll also be able to unlock a new dungeon. So let's see. Nope, not quite yet. Just shy on item level. Actually, it says we're 144, but it must not be counting the legendary effects right now. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. My overall, I guess, feedback is really what I've been saying all along. If you're looking at Venthyr and you're also primarily considering tanking the fact that this is essentially supposed to stack your damage, healing, and haste by 2% should ultimately give you a higher throughput. I don't know if it's just completely broken right now or what, but if you don't cast for a second and a half, it's going to start to penalize you. That's pretty hard not to cast anything for at least a second and a half. So you shouldn't need to worry about that even as a tank. But you may have downtimes in raid fights at least where you may not want to have that popped. Otherwise, it's going to chip away at your health. So it's a risk reward. It needs to be tuned. It's a little too weak right now for Guardian Druid. It's not giving you the throughput you need on damage to really pace very well at all. And then when you take a look at the legendary that I stacked it with, which is ultimately enhancing my Berserk to the point where I've got it on a half-second less cooldown, which is really the nicest thing about it so far. It's also supposed to increase your damage by 25%. So the fact that I am running at this low damage kind of throughout the dungeon, and if I look at overall, I'm averaging under 1k damage for the dungeon. That includes massive AoE pulls as well. It's just not increasing the overall throughput to the point where it makes a whole lot of sense to run this right now. The Leech is really nice. So it's the Leech if you do have Frenzy regen down or whatever and you just need a little extra healing. But the Leech in and of itself, as you can see, is only 2.8% of my entire healing for the dungeon. So at least with cookie cutter gear, it's not scaling. It might be something that scales better with stats as you go. So initial feedback there, that Legacy of the Sleeper feels a little weak out of the box. And then if you try to seek to combine that with the power that you get from Ravenous Frenzy, the throughput is not necessarily worth making the Covenant decision to couple those two things together if you're going to be targeting Legacy of the Sleeper first, at least not in current state. And again, things to keep in mind, they did just give Bear a little bit of a buff, at least in terms of mitigation this week, so it makes him more viable, a little bit more tanky, a little bit more to what we're used to in terms of that tankiness, but everything else is relatively the same, but with lower damage output, at least with white damage. So keep that in mind. A lot of things still to change in the month and a half that we have until Shadowlands drops, but just wanted to give you guys some initial feedback.